Hey there and welcome back to my channel. Today the video is, as you see in the title, is 3 potential landing spots for Aaron Rodgers. Now, when I say potential landing spots, I do mean potential. Now, there are plenty of teams that I already mentioned in my Lamar Jackson video that needs quarterbacks. So I tried to take a different route in this video so that it doesn't seem too repetitive, the teams that I mentioned. There is one team that was mentioned in the last video, but it was an honorable mention. So I was able to use it in this video. So with that also being said, I want to let you know that I'm not going to do a video for every single quarterback out there. Like, when I chose this video, it was either Tom Brady or it was Aaron Rodgers. With Tom Brady, I'm not really sure what's going to happen with Tom Brady, and I also don't want to speculate too much. If it's over for him, it's over for him. But I just don't want to keep talking about quarterbacks because it just gets repetitive. It's like the same teams are going to be mentioned and the same reasons are going to be mentioned. So I don't want to keep like using the same ideas. So for the time being, this will be my last potential video for a quarterback as far as landing spots. There may be more as the offseason progresses and more coordinators get hired and more head coaches get hired. So there's going to be definitely more videos about quarterbacks, but probably just not right now. For right now, I like the idea of doing a Lamar Jackson video, and I like the idea of doing an Aaron Rodgers video. And with that being said, let's go ahead and move on to our 3 teams that we think Aaron Rodgers may go to in this offseason. Let's start off with the first team. The first team I mentioned was an honorable mention in the last video, and they are the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, the only reason I mentioned the Raiders is because they said they will move on from Derek Carr, which I didn't think was going to happen. I didn't think that Derek Carr's play would go as bad as it did, but can we also throw some blame on Josh McDaniels? What was their record in one-score games? They were 0-7 or 0-8 at one point in the season in one-score games. That goes down to coaching, but at the same time, there were some mistakes that Derek Carr made that could be fixed, well, I think it could be fixed, so I don't think they should have given up on him so soon. He's always been a scapegoat, in my opinion. Everybody blames him for a lot of things as if he wasn't an MVP candidate early on in his career, and he bought that team out of mediocrity. And every time something goes wrong, it seems like they blame Derek Carr, and this time it seems like they actually will trade him. In that division, though, the reason why I think that they would trade for Aaron Rodgers is, one, you have a proven commodity already. You already have Devontae Adams, which means that you have one half of the equation that Green Bay already had. With that being said, you know what you're going to get out of them too. If I was Aaron Rodgers, I would not go there if they didn't re-sign or franchise tag Josh Jacobs. The same thing I said about Lamar Jackson. That's the contingent plan. I think that to get Aaron Rodgers, you probably give up a Darren Waller. Derek Carr is already gone, so that frees up some money with his contract being off the books. Then getting rid of Darren Waller, I think he makes like maybe $11 million next year, so it's not like you're getting rid of too much money. But I think that anybody who takes on Aaron Rodgers' contract is going to ask for the Green Bay Packers to take on like some of the contract, whether it's 50% of the contract, whether it's 25% of it. I don't care. I don't know which one. So I think that trading for Aaron Rodgers, giving up Darren Waller, a player, along with a second-round pick and a fifth-round pick, can land you Aaron Rodgers. The reason why I say a second and a fifth and a player is because the Raiders currently hold, I think they hold the 7th pick or maybe the 9th, whatever. They hold the top 10 first-round pick. I'm pretty sure it's 7th. And with that being said, that first-round pick can net you, in a perfect scenario, 5 years. Do you think that giving up a first-round pick where you can get at least 5 years out of versus getting Aaron Rodgers, who will be 40 by the end of next year in his first season there, versus 5, do you think that it's worth giving up 5 good years of somebody, whether an offensive tackle, whether a wide receiver, versus getting only 2 or 3 years of whatever Aaron Rodgers is able to give you for those years? Do you think that's worth it? I do not. With giving up the 2nd and 5th round pick and a player, you still retain a Hunter Renfrow. You still have a Devontae Adams. So that's 2 reliable wide receivers right there, barring any injury concerns, because Hunter Renfrow didn't have a good year last year, but it was only because of injuries. So if you can get a Josh Jacobs as your running back, you can keep your slot receiver in Hunter Renfrow, you keep your number 1 receiver in Devontae Adams, maybe go ahead and get Mac Hollins back, re-sign him, because he didn't have that bad of a year. He had times where he flashed a little bit, and he could still be a wide receiver 3 or maybe even a wide receiver 4 or 5, whatever it is. I think he's still good for the receiver room. With that being said, I think you have to work on that offensive line. So if you take that 7th pick, you can go ahead and get a guy. You can get the guy from Northwestern, Peter Skoronski. He's the first. He's the number 1 rated prospect on the offensive line. You have a Paris Johnson Jr. from Ohio State, and you also have a Broderick Jones from Georgia. You have options to build up on that offensive line. On top of that, Josh Jacobs was your leading rusher last year, was a leading rusher in the NFL last year. So boosting that offensive line not only helps Aaron Rodgers and to be protected and be able to throw to Devontae Adams and all of them, but it also opens up for Josh Jacobs to have another good year in which he could build on that and not show that it was just a one-year wonder, how many would think. Another reason why you want to get Aaron Rodgers is because just in your division alone, you have a Russell Wilson who was probably the worst quarterback in that division last year. But if he can progress and get back to where he was, he could potentially be the 3rd best quarterback, barring them getting Aaron Rodgers. So if you add the Aaron Rodgers into the AFC West, you have a Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, and a Russell Wilson. Along with that, you have the kings of the AFC. The current kings of the AFC are Patrick Mahomes. You already named him. You have Josh Allen. You potentially keep Lamar Jackson in that division. You got in that conference. You keep Deshaun Watson in that conference. Like, it's so many quarterbacks in this conference. The only way you can compete is by having an elite quarterback of your own. He is only 1 year removed from being the 2-time reigning MVP. I think it's an experiment that you can take. I think it's an experiment that the Raiders would make, and that's pretty much all I have for it. I think the Las Vegas Raiders can do a lot of things if they get Aaron Rodgers, but it's contingent on, one, the coaching has to be better. Josh McDaniels can't sit here and have these badly coached games. Like, I believe there was a game in which he went for a 2-point conversion, and then they ended up losing by 1 point. I want to say that was a Kansas City game. But regardless of what game it was, the coaching has to be better, and that's pretty much all I have to say about the Las Vegas Raiders and Aaron Rodgers. Moving on to the second team that I think Aaron Rodgers can move on to, I'm going to say the New York Giants. Before I mention my reasons for the New York Giants, let me mention one of the rumors that was told. One of the rumors going around is that the New York Jets are going to be willing to go in on Aaron Rodgers. One thing that I didn't take into account in my last video for the Lamar Jackson was the fact that the Jets are projected to have negative $2.7 million in cap space, meaning that they're going to have to cut some people, and then they're also going to have to restructure contracts. So, depending on what happens with that, they could still go for an elite quarterback so that they can compete in that conference, like I just mentioned with the other team. I just realized all my teams. Oh, okay, yeah. But no, only one team is NFC. But the Jets, I don't see them getting him. Now, they did say that they hired Nathaniel Hackett. Nathaniel Hackett is the offensive coordinator that made Aaron Rodgers a 2-time reigning MVP before this year. So there's always the relationship thing that they try to play in NFL. But overall, I think that is an enticing place, but I mentioned them for my Lamar Jackson video, so instead of mentioning them, I wanted to go with the New York Giants. My reasons for the New York Giants is the fact that they have $44.3 million in cap space next year, meaning that you really don't have to give up any of the players that you have, but on top of that, they are losing some key players to free agency. When I say losing them, they are just hitting free agency. They haven't lost anybody yet. As of now, the wide receivers that they're losing were the best wide receivers that they had last year, outside from Sterling Shepard. I think you could re-sign Sterling Shepard for the low because he just got hurt and he may come back on a 1-year deal. I think you could re-sign Darius Slayton because this is the team that gave him an opportunity. And then you also have a Richie James that's hitting free agency, and I think they could re-sign him as well. Even if they don't, I think that they can make a separate move and pick up somebody. You could potentially get a Brandon Cooks off it with his contract. You could match the money that he gets from that contract, or you can make Houston pay some of it down. I don't know how that's going to work out. It was only a 2-year extension anyway for about roughly almost $40 million, I believe. So there is that. There's opportunities to get a wide receiver for an Aaron Rodgers. And with getting Aaron Rodgers, I think you may give up a 2nd-round pick in this year's draft and a future 4th-round pick along with that, and another pick from this year being the 5th-round pick. I mentioned the 2nd and 5th-round pick for the Raiders, but the Raiders are able to give up a player like Darren Waller that can help them. With the Giants losing some of their key players, or potentially losing their key players, they look to only give up some of the farm, and that is the picks that they have. With the 4th round pick, though, I'd say that that's going to be a conditional pick where if Aaron Rodgers performs well or if they make the playoffs, that 4th round pick could potentially become a 3rd round pick. And these last couple years, these picks becoming like from 2nd to 1st round picks have opened my eyes to new opportunities in these trades. So that's why I mentioned that. Along with that, obviously, I said the 44.3 million. So in anybody that they do lose, they could potentially bring in someone as a free agent. The Giants, they were supposed to be in a rebuild year, so that didn't work out. They made the playoffs, but then they got whooped by the Eagles. I know it's a Zach Ertz jersey. I'm sorry. Let's just act like this is an 8 right here. Hold on, where's it at? Let's just act like this is an 8 and it's Dallas Goedert. It's Zach Ertz, though. I love my guy. Regardless, the Giants performed well over expectations last year. Brian Dable proved that he is a great coach. I already knew he was a great coach. I didn't think that they would miss the playoffs, but I didn't think that they would get a playoff win. With that being said, you still have Wink Martindale. You're basically keeping the continuity that you had by retaining your offensive and defensive coordinators. And with that being said, I think that if they can re-sign Barkley, sign some receivers, and trade for a receiver, I think that they will be in great position to trade for Aaron Rodgers. The thing is, though, the reason why I think they would be willing to get Aaron Rodgers rather than re-signing a Daniel Jones is because the fact that it's looking so far as of now is looking like the Dallas Cowboys are going to keep their coordinators. Kellen Moore still has interviews, but I think his interview he had was with the Carolina Panthers, and they signed Frank Reich. And the interview that Dan Campbell had, he ended up telling potential teams that he's going to stay with the Cowboys, meaning that they get yet another year to work with the same players and to grow again, and they just made the playoffs. They already won 12 games, I want to say, in back-to-back years. And the Eagles also look like they're going to retain at least their offensive coordinator. I don't think Shane Steichen is going to get a job. And it's looking like they said D'Amico Ryans is the favorite to go to Houston. So I don't know if Jonathan Gannon is going to leave anymore. Maybe not this year. So with that, you remain the continuity that is so important in this league for players to be in the same system for multiple years. With that being said, Giants have to do something more than just having continuity. They have to take a risk, and they have to go for a quarterback to compete against the Cowboys and to compete against the Eagles and to potentially compete against a Washington team that was in the playoff picture right along with every other team in the division. So it's not like this division is weak like people used to say, the NFC least. It's not that any longer. They have to do what they have to do to compete in this NFC. And honestly, the NFC is weak in terms of the quarterback play that we have. Like, there's a lot, like, even with the Cowboys, a lot of people don't like Dak Prescott. We have Jalen Hurts, though. I don't know who we have in the 49ers anymore, but it is a weaker division as far as the quarterback goes. And if Aaron Rodgers can stay in that weak, I said division. If Aaron Rodgers can stay in that weak quarterback conference, then that's a better shot for him to get back to the Super Bowl and win one. And it's also a better shot for the Giants to go ahead and compete further. I think the one thing that they can do is use some of that cap space to bolster their defense, because the defense already played well. But if they can go out and get a Jordan Poyer who's bound to hit free agency this year unless he gets franchise tagged, I don't know if that's going to happen. But I think that you can get a Jordan Poyer. You could re-sign Saquon Barkley, not even tag him. You're re-signing Saquon Barkley, and you could sign some of the receivers that you lose, or you could trade for a receiver, and I think that makes sense for them. And the one thing also that is funny, though, is that the Jets having rumors for Aaron Rodgers. What's up with them and having the Packers sloppy seconds at quarterback? Like, I think that's just funny, but I don't think it's happening this time. I think that if Aaron Rodgers does go to a New York team, he goes to the Giants and not the Jets. Now we get to our last team on the list. The last team on my list is a team that I personally don't see making the move, but in terms of football, you got to think outside the box, and I think that the New England Patriots will be in play for Aaron Rodgers. Before I mention why I think that this could be a possibility, I do want to mention the fact that I wouldn't give up on Mac Jones. I understand that he had a bad year, but who is going to have a bad year with two failed head coaches being your offensive coordinator? And on top of that, before they became head coaches, they were never an offensive coordinator. You had Matt Patricia, who was a defensive coordinator, and many other positional coaches. And then you had Joe Judge, who was a special teams coach, being an offensive coordinator. I personally don't understand why Mac Jones gets a brunt of this hatred that people have spewed out towards the Patriots, but he also didn't play as well as he did in his rookie year, and I understand that. With Bill O'Brien coming back, if I'm correct, I think Bill O'Brien was his offensive coordinator for his title-winning year when obviously when they won the title. But I could be wrong. I don't particularly know. I know Dable was one of the offensive coordinators, but that was a while ago, and that was before he was with the Buffalo Bills as their offensive coordinator. With that being said, I wouldn't be the one that gives up on Mac Jones, but the reasons why he could be given up on are about to be said. One of the reasons why I think that they could trade for him, they have $31.4 million in cap space. So you have the ability to take on the contract, but with Bill, I think that he will get the Packers to take on some of Aaron Rodgers' contract. I mentioned that with the two teams prior, I think, or at least I know I mentioned it with the Raiders. And it's only for this year. It's not like it's going to be they're taking on 50% of the rest of the contract. No, it's just for this year so that they have way more room to compete this year. With that being said, I do want to mention the fact that DeAndre Hopkins has been rumored to be of interest to the Patriots. So it'll kind of be like when they traded for Randy Moss back in the day when he was with Oakland at the time. So I think they can potentially get D-Hop and they could potentially get Aaron Rodgers. If that's how it goes, I think they re-sign a Damian Harris. I don't know at that point if you could re-sign a Jacoby Myers unless you just completely give up on trying to re-sign like a Jonathan Jones on the defensive side. But if you could re-sign a Jacoby Myers to go with a DeAndre Hopkins, or maybe you use your 14th overall pick to pick someone like maybe Johnston or maybe a Jordan Addison. I don't know. I particularly like them using that 14th pick to draft a wide receiver and also finding a way to trade for a DeAndre Hopkins because in all reality, they're not going to have to give up a first, and I don't think they have to give up a second-round pick for DeAndre Hopkins. But I'm not going to get into the trade for DeAndre Hopkins because I'm just going to say this is a perfect scenario and that they can trade for him without giving up 7 picks. The one that I will mention, though, I think that they can do a 3rd and a 4th round pick to get Aaron Rodgers. Yes, I know 2 picks is sounds too little, but let's just say that one of those are conditional picks. Maybe the 3rd round pick becomes a 2nd round pick and they get a 2nd and a 4th. Or maybe the 4th round pick is conditional for a further year and it can move up to a 3rd. So basically they'll be giving up 2 3rd round picks or maybe a 2nd and a 4th. Who knows? But if you get an Aaron Rodgers, like I said, keep a Damian Harris. It'll kind of resemble when he had what's his name, Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. You would have Ramondre Stevenson and Damian Harris. Damian Harris, I'm pretty sure, had like 17 touchdowns just 2 years ago. Granted, he didn't have the best year last year, but you have Ramondre Stevenson, so now the backfield isn't as bad, but I think you do need to build up on that O-line. So you have to either use cap space to build up on the O-line, or you have to draft somebody, or you just have to hope that the coaches get it together. With that being said, I think that you can get a DeAndre Hopkins. I think you can get Aaron... in the trade for Aaron Rodgers, though, I do think that you have to trade Mac Jones. If you're going to give up on Mac Jones, or if you're going to bring in a quarterback, you have to give up Mac Jones. Do not waste that kid's time. He can go somewhere else and compete. Now, with Mac Jones, if he gets traded to the Packers, I think that 3rd and that 4th round pick are not conditional any longer. I think he goes to Green Bay. Him and Jordan Love get into a quarterback competition. Whether he wins or not, that's on them. Maybe the conditional pick can be nullified if Mac Jones becomes the starter. I don't know, like I said. And then on top of that, if you get Mac Jones, does Aaron Rodgers and a draft pick come? Like maybe a Aaron Rodgers in the 4th go for Mac Jones, a 3rd and a 4th? I don't know, but it seems interesting though. But if you bring in Aaron Rodgers and he doesn't come in with Mac Jones being traded away to the Packers, I think you have to trade Mac Jones to like maybe an Indianapolis team or any team that needs a quarterback because you're just wasting that kid's time. I don't think that's good on him for you to bring in a quarterback after 2 years of him playing and think that he should stay there and sit behind him. If he does sit behind him, he'll learn a lot probably, but it'll probably be a bad taste in his mouth, and I'm sure he wants to go somewhere else and compete. So in the trade for Aaron Rodgers, you either give up Mac Jones in that trade or you give him up in a separate trade. One of the reasons why I think that you bring in the Aaron Rodgers, a lot of people probably think the same thing as I do. Don't give up Mac Jones. But if you bring in Aaron Rodgers, it's probably because Bill Belichick is in his twilight years as a coach. How much longer do you expect him to coach? He's well into his 70s, if I'm correct. Maybe 74, I don't know. But how much longer do you expect him to coach and keep on giving his time to this game? At some point, he's bound to retire, and what way to retire than having Aaron Rodgers as your last quarterback for maybe the last 2 or 3 years of his career and of your career, having a DeAndre Hopkins who's probably in his last couple years as well. I think DeAndre Hopkins is just 30, but by the time he's 33, people have already starting to say that he declined. I think that he had a great year once he came back from his suspension. So he could have potentially 5, 6 years, but as far as being an elite wide receiver, he probably only has about 3 years left. You give him to New England with Aaron Rodgers, and you try to keep your core of players and build on that through the draft and free agency. I think that gives Bill Belichick his best chance to finally win one last Super Bowl and to go out on top in the twilight of his career. And with that, that is the 3 teams that I think that Aaron Rodgers could potentially go to. Heavy on the emphasis on potential. Like I said in the beginning of the video, this is not something that may happen, but in the NFL you have to think outside the box. I of course can name all the teams that I said prior in the Lamar Jackson video, but like I said, that is repetitive and I did not want to do that. So I hope you enjoyed. I would love to hear your ideas on where you think he can go. I already mentioned the Jets, but I'm not mentioning any other honorable mentions, and I am probably not doing any more quarterback videos, at least until free agency and the offseason starts. So I hope you like, subscribe, and share, and I hope to hear from you guys, and I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you look forward to the next video that I put out. Take care.